Lord, the bill was higher than I wanted it to be. We don't say that. We say, well, Lord, how am I going to pay this? You know, we don't praise him. We ask the question. And every defining moment in our life is to praise God. Every defining moment in our life, good and bad, indifferent, is to draw us closer to God. The blessings draw us closer to God, and even the harder times in our life are to and intended to draw us closer to God. So now, this particular account, this thing, whatever the Lord has designed and architected, is to draw others. And he said there that the Son of God may be glorified, is to draw all men to him. Now I want you to find, someone turn to Jeremiah 32:17. Maybe someone wants to find Romans 8:28. And then someone find Matthew 19:26. All right? I know you probably could quote Romans 8. That has to deal with his creation, by which he created. Logically, nothing's too hard for him. He brought man into existence by dirt and a word. So therefore, even a sickness, even at this time, Lazarus was only sick, then apparently nothing can be too hard for God. Nothing is. Look, somebody have Matthew 19:26.
But Jesus beheld them and said unto them, with men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible.
All right. So even though he's talking about one instance that he's dealing with, this, even though this, is difficult for you, I want you to know that all things are possible. There's nothing that God cannot do. And that's a truth that we have to swallow. It's a truth that we have to really absorb in our life, because you have to be honest. We doubt God every now and then, don't we? We doubt God by questions. How are you going to do this? Well, really, I'm not saying that I have faith you will. I'm wondering, are you able to do this, without saying, are you able to do it? We kind of, we think we fool God with our questions, yet in our heart and mind, we doubt that he's going to do it. We doubt that he's able to suffice and make things all better or supply. And even though we don't voice it, in our heart, there's times that we doubt God. We question him, and so now Jesus himself said, all things are possible. With men, there are impossible. You cannot, you're finite, you're limited, but God is not. And so all things are possible with God. No matter how big the problem is, how small it is, all things are possible. And then Romans 8:28. Someone's got that?
And we know that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose.
So everything, hard things, difficult times, seasons in our life which we wish that wouldn't take place, the greatest things in our life, the joys of life, all these things work together and are combining to bring to our heart and mind, and for us to glorify God in all things. Those are things that became impossible to us were possible for God, and he fulfilled it. All things work together for good. So now you have these messengers that come to the Lord, and Lazarus is sick. All right? Can the Lord heal sickness? Well, they know that he can. He's already done it. He's healed the blind. He's even cast demons out. This is toward the end of his ministry. Jesus has been in the ministry and has been walking in the ministry for a number of years now, and this is toward the end of his ministry. However, it's not completed yet, and they have seen some wonderful acts of God. Wonderful acts of God. You would think that all you need to do is see one act of God, of the impossible, and you become a believer. But you know how many times individuals seen the greatest things of God and yet didn't believe? How many on the hillside, where it only says that there were 5,000 men, but we could say that there were more than that, up to 20,000. How many of them came out from that hillside after being fed with 5 loaves and 3 fishes? How many got saved and followed him after that? 12. And the only reason they followed him because they had to carry the baskets. You had 19,988 people that never really believed. although they've seen this powerful miracle. The Jews seen him, the Pharisees seen him, and yet they disguised him and titled him as, Satan, casting out Satan. You're a follower of Lucifer. The Lord said, a kingdom divided amongst itself can't stand. Yet, God can do great things. So these messengers, come to him. Lazarus is only sick. It's not a real big deal for the Lord. And so they tell him, and he says, this sickness is not unto death. Well, that's comforting, isn't it? Yet the Lord did not say that he's, this death, a prolonged death or entirely death. This is going to be the end for Lazarus. He just says that it's not unto death. He's not going to stay that way. So he says in verse number 5, John says, now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. And when he had heard, therefore, that he was sick, he abode 2 days still in the same place where he was. I don't know about you, but when we got the call last Sunday, when Brent was in the accident, I didn't wait 2 days. I knew I had obligations, and yet my family's important to me, and my son, not knowing what's going on, we didn't hesitate to get up and go and to find out what's going on and how bad is he hurt. Is he, there were so many questions that arose, and we went there. My dad, confession's good, I suppose. So I'm sitting in the hospital, and we have Life 360. You have that app, Life 360? It's an app that you can get, that you can have all your family members, and exactly where they're at all times. And so we got that for my mom and dad, and most of our family's on it. And so my dad calls me up. I'm sitting in the hospital, and he says, you up here in Indiana? I said, yeah, why? Well, yeah, not to pry. It's not like I'm spying on you. He said, I was just, looking at Mom, and, she's supposed to be, coming home. And he said, I just happened to scroll down, and I seen you were in Indianapolis. And he said, I scrolled down a little farther, and I seen your top speed was 92. And he said, I knew that wasn't just your norm. I said, no, it's not. And he said, it's not just a Sunday drive there. And then I looked at your location, and you're at the hospital, and there was a children's hospital right beside that hospital. And he says, I didn't know if something happened to Ryan's kids. And I said, no. I said, nothing with Ryan's kids. But I said, Brent wrecked his motorcycle over here this weekend. And, that feeling of, Dad, just wishes he was there as well. And, it was just a moment in time where that was just there. And he knew that I had an eagerness, apparently, to get there. And we were heading there, and Elizabeth said, that's going to show up. I said, well, Dad. Yeah, and I told her, I said, I this fast. And I was in a trailer on I-70, and it was just one of those things where, I'm sorry, I've got a place to go. When I taught my daughter Bethany to drive, she was very timid. She would pull out like a snail. And I tell her, I said, when you, and my goal was to have our kids cry at least one time when I taught them to drive, and I succeeded very well with that. And but I told her, I said, when you pull out, Bethany, you pull out with a purpose. And then I proceeded to tell her, I said, you have a destination, and you are going to get to that destination, and no one is to stop you from getting to that destination. You have a purpose. From that point on, she did not let anybody stop her from getting to her destination. She's probably one of the most aggressive drivers of all of our kids, and I can't drive with her much. She scares me. But 2 days, he waited there for 2 days. So now, how many days have passed so far? Took 2 days for the messengers to get there. Now the Lord's taken 2 days to even consider to go back. So 4 days have passed since the messengers left Bethany. 4 days now. And you have to consider that they have to go back. So now you have 2 days being sick, and now 2 days possibly during this time, most likely as the messengers were coming, or during this time, this 2-day period of Jesus waiting, Lazarus passed away. So you look in verse number 7, then after that he saith to his disciples, let us go into Judea again. All right, they just come from there. They just come from there. And verse number 8, his disciples say unto him, Master, the Jews of late sought to stone thee, and goest thou thither again? I mean, that's back in John chapter 10, verse 39, where they were seeking to stone him. They were going to destroy Jesus. And therefore, Jesus escaped. His time was not come. The Lord had not committed that time for him to be captured at that time. And so that's why they went up beyond Jordan. And so now they're going to go back. And the disciples are worried. The disciples are wondering, why are you going to go back? We just come from there 4 days ago. I don't think that they've changed their mind. They still want to stone you. In verse number 9, Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours in the day? If any man walk in the day, he stumbleth not, because he seeth the light of this world. But if any man walk in the dark, in the night, he stumbleth, because there is no light in him. Now, why would the Lord even insert this seemingly mysterious, this phrase that he uses? What is he saying? Why does he insert this? Now, traveling is not uncommon. And normally, when travelers would travel, they would use, the Jews divided the day into two parts outside of their segments. They divided the area or the day into night and day, all right? 12 hours daylight, 12 hours nighttime. It was just divided. You traveled during the 12 hours of the day. And during that time, normally from 6 to 6, from the early morning hours where it wasn't so hot till the evening time, and then you would take rest. So they would travel 12 hours a day. And that's why he says, there are not 12 hours in a day. If any man walk in the day, he stumbleth not, because he seeth the light of this world. So there is no problem that during the day there can be work done. During the day is a time to progress. And he says there's a time when, at the night we cannot, because there's no light. He is basically saying, just as a traveler takes every minute out of those 12 hours, every moment that he can do, make another mile, make another journey, to complete that 12 hours, he